What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys podcast. So, this Friday Focus today is brought to you by a kind of similar episode that Alex Ramosi did last week that I thought was pretty relevant kind of to the time of year being the new year. And he did a whole episode around like secret hacks to really grow your business and yourself in 2025. And so I thought that I would do a little episode on 5 tips to help you crush your real estate goals in 2025. And I always find that these kind of episodes are helpful both as a consumer and as a creator standpoint going into the new year, because it kind of makes you reframe what is actually important for growing in your business. We're kind of going into a weird year. It's been a, up and down couple of years in real estate in general. And going in with a new administration and everything going in 2025, there's a lot of kind of uncertainty in the market. And so going through this, putting this episode together, honestly was a good good exercise for myself, kind of just analyzing what I think is important going into next year. And hopefully you guys get some value to it as well. So if this is your first time to this show with Collecting Keys, we are a real estate investor show for real estate investors. And our goal is to help anyone that is a growing or aspiring real estate entrepreneur to learn from other investors that are in their business full time so you can do more deals, make more money, and have a better future for yourself and your family. And so, if you don't know me, my name is Mike DeHaan, and I have been a full-time investor since 2018. I have done over 500 transactions, a lot of wholesales, a lot of flips. I built a nice little $15 million rental portfolio for myself, and I am a full-time entrepreneur that buys and sells real estate across the United States. All right, so going into our 5 steps, or I guess our five, let's say, tips to crushing your real estate in 2025, because they're not necessarily steps you're doing in order, but these are 5 things that you should definitely focus on, and we'll dive into these here. So the first one is going to be to focus on your income. And when it comes to real estate, right, it is much easier when you have money. And one of the most common things that I see people tend to get caught up on is they are too focused on kind of long-term investing, and they let the income piece kind of go by the wayside. That's why a big sort of tagline for this show has always been to focus on massive income before passive income with your real estate business, because honestly, it is a lot easier to be a successful real estate entrepreneur if you have a high income and or a lot of money. And so going into next year, if you want to take things seriously, this really should be your focus, whether it is in your business or in your W-2 or whatever it is you're doing. You should be trying to maximize your income before you're focusing too much on just this long-term investing. And what that looks like is obviously a little bit different for everyone. Ideally, I think in most markets and most situations, you should be shooting for about $250,000 a year in income at the low end. And you ideally should be able to live comfortably on less than half of that, so that you have well over $100,000 to be able to invest in, and both in your business and into properties full time. Because if you're making like $500,000 a year and you're spending $450,000 a year, I don't know, you might as well be making $50,000 and spending $40,000, right? You're just as broke as that person if you don't have the ability to invest in yourself and your business systems. And so focus on that income, keep your spending nice and low. And if you can get that income higher than you need to live, you can invest the majority of the extra, then you're going to be in a much better place going into next year. All right. Second thing is to focus on building a better network. So real estate isn't sexy right now. It's like not really a asset class that is getting quite as much interest as it has in past years. A lot of people are shifting to different things, be that crypto, be that, small businesses, even stocks right now. I've seen like day trading starting to get really popular. Doing different kinds of like cash flow education consulting kind of businesses have really started to take off too. I'm starting to see so many people that are like trying to be a VA consultant, a virtual assistant consultant, right? Or like a life coach, things like that, even though they have limited experience themselves. And as a result, like you just see less people of quality that are sticking around with real estate. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you should necessarily follow suit, but it does mean that you are going to have to work harder to identify and maintain relationships with the best people in the space. Honestly, this whole situation is a big reason that we started the Scale community. It's because it gives us a verifiable way to know who is good operators because we kind of coach those people up and we help them get established. And there are so many different communities out there that just kind of don't have that, right? Like even the other groups that I'm in, there's a lot of people that like to talk a big game or they like to, kind of show up to everything but are non-starters. And that isn't what you want in your network, especially going into 2025, which I think is going to be a pretty hot year. And so spend your time like learning to identify who the nobodies are and get away from them and nurture those relationships that you find with the A players in your market and ideally become one of those A players too, because then you will be able to make more money with the top people because it is a small community in real estate in general. And if you are one of the top providers out there, people are naturally going to want to work with you and bring you more opportunity. So focus on having higher quality conversations, higher quality relationships, and find the best people in your market. And then a ton more opportunities will come to you next year. All right. Number 3, expand your lead generation. And this is one that I would say my opinion has changed on over the past couple of years, mostly because what I'm emphasizing with this is that you should be focusing on getting as many different kinds of lead generation as possible coming into your business. So in the past, I've always been a huge proponent of like find one source of lead generation that kind of works, be that calling, mail, networking, online marketing, whatever it is, and just lean heavily, heavily into that as much as you can until you literally can't do it anymore. Right. And then start to, add in other pieces from there. The problem is now there's so much new legislation coming in around like everything. I mean, SMS and cold calling has been on the chopping block for a couple of years. That's going to continue to happen going into next year. Even direct mail, which has been my tried and true, is kind of looking a little bit interesting going into next year as they're talking about privatizing the postal service, trying to get rid of some of the government efficiency with whatever Elon Musk and they're working with over in like the Doge group. There's basically no guarantee that any form of marketing is going to last the test of time now. Even like the pay-per-lead stuff, which we've been playing with quite a bit, where, these different pay-per-lead companies, they have like, they're having these new requirements with in order to even receive leads with how they're having to register and everything else. And so like, who even knows if like online marketing is going to be able to stick around like it has traditionally, and at those, not only are you going to suddenly be at the mercy of the algorithm, you've always been at the mercy of the algorithm, not that going to continue, but you could suddenly be facing new federal legislation that restricts how it even works or who you're even allowed to market to. And so as a result, I think what you need to do is learn to establish as many different marketing channels as you can, and focus on the things that people can't take away from you, which is going to be brand, which is going to be reputation, which is going to get customer reviews, right? Which is going to be doing good business where you actually leave people in a better position, which is something that gets lost in real estate somewhat regularly because everyone sort of looks at good business as how many zeros am I making every year, right? How many figures am I putting into my bank account? But those things are the first things those are the first people that are going to get wrecked if the marketing systems kind of get funny. Right? Because when it gets harder to find people, when it gets harder to market, customers will suddenly have more and more choices than they've had before. They'll have to do more due diligence on you. And when they do that, if you don't have a good reputation, you don't have reviews, you don't have a strong brand, people are not going to work with you. Right. And so really, like, I think that if you are small, like you're doing less than $10,000 a month in marketing, you should still be focusing just on a singular form of marketing. But as you're growing, look to do more things, right? Like, don't just continue to grow your direct mail, but grow your brand. Get the online marketing stood up, do some media marketing, go on TV, go on the radio, put up some billboards, expand your network, host a meetup, right? Do things that are going to get you in front of as many people as possible. And that way, if any of them do go away, you at least have something else that you can lean on so your business doesn't suddenly go to zero overnight. All right. Item number 4 is going to be to resist shiny object syndrome. And this kind of goes a little bit off of the networking one that I mentioned in number 2. But, there's so many different things people are getting fixated on, whether that's, crypto, people talking about the multifamily crash. People are talking about, starting up or acquiring trade businesses because blue collars where all the money's at now. We're starting coaching businesses. People are getting into AI, all sorts of different things. And The problem is every one of those that kind of draws your attention is taking you away from the thing that you already know works for you, which is your real estate business. And so you need to do everything you can to resist these temptations, right? You will have friends, competitors, partners, coworkers who all start to go into different things. You need to do your best to resist that temptation and focus on real estate if that is what you want to do, right? If you are somebody that is worth tens of millions of dollars, right, you can have a lot more capacity to explore these different avenues because you can hire staff, you can hire experts, you can delegate a lot of the different day-to-days of these different endeavors. But if you are like most people, you're worth less than $1 million bucks, or maybe a couple $1,000,000, you make a few $100,000 a year if you're lucky, you do not have the capacity to be spreading out into all of these different endeavors, right? All that's going to happen is you're going to take a little nibble of a bunch of stuff and you're going to end up with nothing. Whereas if you just focus in on what you already know works for you, which is your real estate and your real estate business, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you are at least somewhat knowledgeable about real estate. You're probably a little bit more of an expert since we don't really do a ton of stuff strictly for newbies. But focus on that and do not let any of these shiny objects pull you away. And I guarantee you that as the larger real estate population moves away and all of their opportunities they would have had start coming into your lap because you're one of the few players left in the game, you will make a lot more money and have a lot more opportunity than if you had gone out and tried to do all these different get rich quick things that are all over the place right now. Okay. All right. And then number 5, which is our last one, is to cash in your profits on your winners and drop your losers, right? And this is specifically talking about assets that you hold. So most people get into real estate because they want to buy and hold assets for the long term. And if you're listening to this, you probably own at least one property. I know most of our listeners usually own a decent little portfolio, whether it's like 3, 4, 5, 10, 30 units, whatever it is. But if you've been buying properties over the last 5 years, I guarantee you that there are some that have appreciated a ton that you now get a very low return on equity on. And there are also probably some that are kind of losers compared to what you expected. And it is the perfect time to reposition the equity that you have in those properties, right? So if you have ones that have appreciated a lot and you're now getting like 1 to 3% return on equity, let's move on from that and free up that capital to be able to focus on the bigger and better opportunities that will be coming down the pipeline. Yes, that might mean that you will be paying taxes. That is okay. Paying taxes is kind of part of realizing gains. The old saying that the only things that are inevitable are death and taxes, you're going to pay them anyway. And so now if you're in a position where you have the ability to reinvest that money and focus on your business, right, and get like a return on ad spend or buy larger distressed assets, you should absolutely do that rather than just like holding on to these properties that you've owned for a while just because you have this identity of being a real estate investor. The best investors I know, they typically only hold properties for like 3 to 7 years. And so it's probable that you have properties that you've owned that length of time and are reaching like kind of their peak of what you're going to really get out of them before you start to have more CapEx items, you start to have more issues that come up with them, you start to have a vacancy that you weren't expecting when you had that tenant that said they were never going to move when you bought it 3 years ago, and you have to turn the whole unit. It's time to start offloading those, right? This is especially true if you have losers. Everyone that has a decent portfolio has some properties that are losers, right? They are either not performing at all, they are greatly underperforming of what you were expecting when you bought them. You don't need to hold on to those just because you have a sunk cost bias. Okay, it's okay to offload those and to move that money onto things that are probably going to do better for you, right? And if you are someone that is serious about growing wealth and growing your business, you probably should do that. And so just it's important to go through all your properties, look at your equity positions, do your bookkeeping, see what your actual return on equity, and not cash on cash return, but return on the equity that you have in these properties is, and make a decision on if you really should be holding those for much longer or you should be exiting and moving it to somewhere else. And like I said, most people, if you've been buying properties for the last 5 years, you probably have a handful of properties that you could make a lot more money if you reposition that equity somewhere else. Okay. Cool. So those are my 5 items. But all in all, I do think that 2025 is going to be a pretty strong year for real estate. I think with the current legislation that is coming in, a lot of stuff that they are going to do is going to push people to make moves in the economy. Kind kind of like macroeconomics aside, I think the big opportunity that's going to exist in real estate is that the investor population is getting smaller as people go and sort of chase other things. And we're also seeing a lot of lead indicators leading to seller distress. So we have balloon payments coming due. We have consumer debt at an all-time high. We have foreclosure starting to reach a peak that we haven't seen for like 15 years. All those things, even though they aren't necessarily the best for a macroeconomic view, they are, honestly, if you are a real estate investor that is doing direct seller work, they are opportunities for us, okay? And so I think that a lot of those things are going to continue to come together. And if you're in the real estate space, there's a ton of opportunities going to be coming through next year. So if you want to make sure that everything's optimized for your business, check out our scale community. Go to collectingkeys.com/scale, and we will make sure that all of your marketing, sales, your pipeline, all of your funding that you need to take these deals down, everything is lined up. And so you're really able to make as much money as you can this next year. So collectingkeys.com/scale, check that out. We'll see if you're a good fit. We would love to bring you in and, make sure that you really maximize your 2025. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to hit me up on Instagram, you can at Mike_invests. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.